Hello everyone, and welcome back to Fleet's Random Ramblings. Catchup Ramblings actually today. This is number 45, and the title hinted at this one. I'm going to make it clear. It's 2 for 1, get it done. So the plan is basically this should be the last catch-up. I hope. Finish it on a nice round 45. And then we'll move over to picking and choosing questions from YouTube and Discord going forwards to try and make sure we get to the bottom of the list every Ramblings and open up the slots for more directed podcasts rather than the sort of random nature it has been, where we do kind of get caught. We get caught up on questions that we want to explore more, but we can't because we need to keep going. I'm not optimistic. We used to do it all the time. We used to get through Ramblings all the time, actually. It's only recently, in the last 6 months, that we've actually started not doing that on a regular basis. Yes, Timu, your Patreon questions do still get priority, of course. That won't change. Every Monday, Patreon questions will be answered first. That's what the people have paid for, and that's what they shall absolutely still get. It's only fair after all. So we shall have to see, see how that goes. But yeah, so before we get into the, before we get into the chat catching up part, let's get into the oh, come on, Patreon question. There we go. Yeah, so we'll get that all squared away, and then we can get on with the business of catching up for not one but two ramblings. So we'll get on with that quickly. Right. So, Timu's question on the Patreon, which I'm about to put in the stream Q&A. Timu Locker on Patreon. Come on, there we go. On Patreon asks, with Palmerston having just passed away, what do you make of animals, especially cats and dogs, becoming part of UK politics and life? From Larry at number 10 to Dylan, charming tradition or pure distraction? If you want my brutal answer, I hadn't really given it much thought. But I suspect it's part of the whole... It is part of modern culture that animals, especially as we started moving cameras into workplaces and, you know, Zoom meetings and all that, animals are becoming, especially pets, are becoming more of a part of everyday life. Just generally and culturally. Basically. I think that's just a reflection on modern politics as well. Just, it is what it is. It's just the modern society. Not really anything positive or negative about it. It just kind of is.
Yeah, we live in a society.
Of course you would say that.
Well, no, she's right. We do live in a society.
One thing I will say regarding that is, I mean, pets are part of the family. They always have been. We have photographic evidence of this. I think this is less a symptom of pets becoming included in politics, and more so a symptom of politicians not really being able to have private lives anymore. If that makes sense.
Yeah, I kind of see that.
I suspect there have always been, you know, cats and dogs and various other pets. I mean, look at frickin' Teddy Roosevelt and all of his pets that he had throughout his stint in the White House. And you can see this. They have always been there. It's just we see them now when we didn't before.
Yeah. Okay, so let's get into the questions, shall we? Unless anyone else has anything they want to add to that, but I don't think that really needs to be... There we go. Right, okay. So, we'll start with the gunnery officer on Discord who asks... A protracted battle, Axis Navy versus another Axis Navy. Italian heavy cruisers of the pre-World War II versus Japanese heavy cruisers of the same era. 6v6 ship surface battle in the afternoon. Who would win? If we're talking purely just 6v6, and it's the Italians versus the Japanese walk away with that. They have more guns, better torpedoes, and neither side is protected against each other's guns. So at that point, it's who's lobbing more shells downrange, and that's the Japanese. And it just comes down to that brutal arithmetic of the Japanese are firing 2 more guns per salvo. And the Italians are firing 2 less. The Japanese have better torpedoes. The Italians have less. It just comes down to that brutal arithmetic, which basically means that the Japanese are going to win that 9 times out of 10. Since armor doesn't really matter in a heavy cruiser engagement in this period, owing to the fact that the 8-inch gun can just handily deal with the other ships at normal battle ranges. So it's who's lobbing more shells, and that's the Japanese. Anyone else?
Um,
Okay, so that was
kind of hit the nail on the head there.
Shit.
Yeah.
As hell frozen over.
Yeah.
Not really. It's a pretty straightforward question. The Japanese has the larger cruiser line, has better cruisers. It's understandable that it's... Unless there's some freak accident of like some miracle shot blowing some Japanese cruisers up in one shot, I don't really think that the Italians have much foot in the game. Especially in the 6v6, and even if it isn't a 6v6, if you start expanding the roster, then you still run into the issue of the Japanese have more cruisers and better cruisers.
Yeah, and also, if you start adding escorts, it gets even worse. Japanese destroyers are significantly better in a surface action than pretty much anything the Italians can offer. And while the Italians might have slightly better light cruisers, the Japanese destroyers more than make up for it.
Do they have better light cruisers at this point?
Yeah, the Condottieri, despite their small size, are significantly better and well laid out than the Kumas and the Sendais are.
Well, World War II era, you're gonna have to throw in the Agonals into the mix as well. Then it becomes a little bit more lopsided, or not lopsided, more equal.
But again, you've got the Japanese destroyers coming in with a haymaker from the left-hand side.
Right. Well, one issue with the Condottieri's is, especially the smaller ones, they've got the protection of a particularly stiff bit of plasterboard.
True, but so do the Japanese light cruisers as well. It's basically going to come down to what's better laid out and got the better fire control, and it's going to be the Italian light cruisers 9 times out of 10. But again, that's not going to matter much when you've got the Fubukis and everything that came after Fubuki coming in and going, hi, I'm a modern Japanese destroyer that outmasses you and has 6 5-inch guns, and you're a tiny Italian destroyer with 2 twin 4-inch. Prepare to die. Yeah, the Italian destroyer arm was not in a good place. 1931. If the North Carolina class had been given a helicopter carrier conversion, how much life would that have given them? Very little. What it would have given the US was a pair of expensive ships that are technically useful, but their operational costs far outweigh their utility. The North Carolinas were very worn out by the end of the Second World War. they'd been worked very, very hard. South Dakota's had as well, but the North Carolinas had really been run through the, the war service bit. Of all the options to pick for a conversion, of all the options to pick for that sort of half helicopter carrier conversion, that's probably the worst of them.
I'd probably deal with in Alaska.
Yeah, if you're gonna do it, the Alaskas are the ones you do it with.
Because at least you got fresh machinery.
Yeah, it's just the North Carolinas are old. They're old. They're slow.
It's less of a conversion and more of a rebuild with them.
Yeah.
Then you have the specifically shaped monster in the room.
And I mean, also politely at this point, you're talking about the US is considering its first LHAs, which I'm sorry, but a purpose-built keel-up LHA is significantly better. Like, yes, you've got the 16-inch guns, but I'm going to point out I'm going to literally, if this is like the 50s and 60s, I'm going to point at the Iowas sitting over there and go, hello, if you want 16-inch guns, there's your bloody platform.
Or you go and look, if you must look at, we need someone to operate helicopters. You go, hey, so we know we've got that boneyard full of our
old Essexes,
like
they did historically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just like the only time I'd recommend upgrading battleships on the Iowas in the 50s and 60s is specifically when you're looking at the missile cruiser conversions.
Yeah.
That's the only time they would really work, because what the fuck was the US then thinking?
Oh, that's
with
different.
The
No,
Oregon City conversions. Like, what the fuck is wrong with you?
Cruisers. There's plenty of them.
Yes, indeed. Right.
They don't cost as much.
Yes. Timbergunner asks, which World War II era battle rifle, in your opinion, is the best? SVT-40, G-43, Type 4, and Garand. It's a tie between the Garand and the SVT-40. Both were reliable systems that survived really hard battlefield environments, serving... Well, the SVT-40 didn't serve in as many environments as the Garand did, but it had to deal with the fucking awful Russian winter, which the Garand didn't have to deal with. So I suppose that evens it out. The G-43 was just a fucking mess. G-43 was just a fucking mess. There's a reason why the Germans never bloody fleeted the damn thing. Also, the issues with that Germany was outnumbered and outgunned as well, so had to keep the Kar-98 line just going as much as possible. But Type 4, the Japanese Type 4 was never really used in great numbers, unlike the others, so doesn't, doesn't really, yeah, they only built 125. It wasn't really a World War II rifle. So the Type 4's out automatically. But yeah, it's gonna be a tie between SVT-40 and Garand. G-43 is a Nazi piece of shit, I'm sorry. G-43 is massively overhyped. To an insane degree.
The issue is, it's a good rifle design. And it just runs into the fact that the prototypes which were good, actually worked, were made of mill steel, which meant they were bloody expensive. And when they tried to modify the design so it could be made out of stamped steel, it started exploding.
Nazi war economy, people. We build a bespoke weapons system that cannot stand up to mass production. Let's mass produce it. Shit!
Yeah, but because But as a design, it's a very good design because it's roller locked action.
I mean, yeah, you're not wrong, but we have to look at this in. This is a battle rifle for World War II. How did you do?
Yeah,
You didn't do
it's
well.
sort of
Extremely
it's sort of-
overcomplicated.
No, it's not even
Yeah.
that. It's one of those rifles
Oh,
where
it
if it's
absolutely
built
is.
by anyone that wasn't 1943 and 1944 Germany, it would be a very good rifle. It was just
No,
being
no, you hand a
manufactured.
G43. No, you hand a G43 to an American, they would tinker and throw half the system in there out before they said, we will manufacture this.
There's a reason
The
why.
roller delay system is completely irrelevant. It's not even. It's something that the G43 doesn't really even need.
Yeah.
Rare.
Yeah. I think it is the Garand, but in terms of what's in second, it definitely is SVT-40. SDG-40 isn't a battle rifle; it's a quasi SMG / assault rifle hybrid. The SDG-44 is weird.
Don't forget the German designation before they adopted the Sturmgewehr designation is machine pistol. It derived from the MP40 lineage.
Yes.
It's supposed to replace the MP40s, not the rifles.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, it's it. But it's also an intermediate case gun. It's not really what most people would proclaim as battle, quote unquote, rifle.
Yeah. So Knight6831 asks, of the Queen Elizabeth class design for Canada, of design U1 to U5, which one would have been the best to be selected? If you want my honest answer, you need to disregard all of the specs and literally look at what is closest to the OG QEs and build that. For the simple fact that keeps your cost of procurement down. And for the Canadians, that's what's going to matter. The base QE is already capable enough. You don't need to tinker with it. Just get them laid down, keep the changes from the design the RN's building as limited as possible, and just add them to the build order to keep your cost per unit down. If anyone else wants to add anything, please, you're all ears, but I have no idea what the U1 to U5 even are. But tinkering with the design when you're trying to procure 3 of the world's already most powerful battleships as Canada, even British Canada prior to World War One, is, I just feel like it's a recipe for the procurement disaster.
I mean, why? What are you hoping to get out of these designs that needs you that requires a reworked design?
Nothing. If Canada's going to buy a QE, it's just going to pay for a QE.
Because if I'm remembering my definitions correctly, at least 2 of those are for enlarged QEs. Which Canada really doesn't need or want.
I mean, functionally, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Canada buying battleship isn't buying a battleship for Canada's need, it's buying it for the Royal Navy's need. It's not like Canada is capable of operating a battle line.
Yeah, I mean, Knight made a point. What was the point of the designs? Which I basically responded to was to give options. Like, if you're looking at procurement, sure, you look at all the options. You absolutely do. Like, you always want to have multiple options on the table, just because it's a sensible thing to do, especially as technology had advanced since the QEs were laid down at this point. It was 1913. But
yeah, it's also a case of, a lot of defense procurement, you take stock of what you can theoretically produce, and then you've used that to look at, okay, given what I know the opponents are expecting to fight, based on what I know can be done, what can they do?
Yeah.
Which is
And
why
to be fair, this is also, Canada footing the bill. The RN could be like, hey, they're paying for it. Let's look at some designs differences so that maybe we could introduce some new capability with this experimental ship or experimental design sort of deal.
or maybe Canadians want it to be an ice-hardened hull.
Things like that.
That's
Yeah.
a possibility,
Like you see
but
come up
who
with
knows?
the cruisers they were looking at buying in the 30s. It's like, or getting transferred in the 30s. It's
Do you fit our needs? Yes or no?
yeah.
Yeah. It's simple as that. But yeah, they probably would have gone with one that would have been closest to the QE, just so they can basically be tacked on to the end of the existing QE build. There probably would have been some changes, but nothing that's going to make a significant enough difference that you can't just tack them on as QE plus, basically.
Simple.
We say all that.
In my opinion.
Do-
In my opinion,
Did Dr. Clark ever nail down what Agincourt was supposed to look like?
Agincourt is absolutely, whatever she looks like is not going to be what the Canadians buy. No way.
Yeah,
That is-
and it's because she's a prelim, not a development on
Yeah,
QEs.
yeah. She's also... She would also be a very unique ship and also, quite frankly, too much ship for what the Canadians want, regardless of whichever one of the proposals or speculations you believe she is.
From what we know of Agincourt that we found already, what Clark's found, he's talked with us about it, is Agincourt, when she's designed, is too much ship for the Royal Navy.
Typical gunnery officer asks, on opinions on US aerial nighttime ability during the Vietnam War, do you think using early IR cameras, flare ships, and night bombers they were effective for interdicting VC and PAVN supply lines? I'll tell you one thing, if they weren't good at it at the start of the war, they were bloody good at it by the end of it. They did just get good. They learnt, they took stock, and by the end of the war, they got very, very good at making the Ho Chi Minh Trail just hell. Hell to be on. They got very, very good at that.
They got very good at intercepting whatever still travels on the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
Yeah.
Pretty much everything got moved underground anyway, so...
Because the US got good at doing the night interdiction mission. There's not really much more to say than that, if we're honest, just because it is that open and shut on that particular question.
Yeah.
1971 asks, of the Lord Nelson preliminary designs, which one could have been chosen instead of what the British went for? Well, given the way this question is phrased, none of them. Because if they could have been chosen, they would have been chosen. Like, it would be a different question if you're asking us which one we might pick, but if you're asking which one could have been chosen historically compared to the one which was, then the answer is none of them.
Did you say Nelson's or Lord Nelson's?
Lord Nelson.
He said Lord Nelson's.
Okay. Because one of the prelims for the Lord Nelson is in a dreadnought configuration with 8 centerline turrets.
But if they wanted to pick that one, they would have done.
In the end, they did pick it. It's called... It would go to be a prelim for dreadnought.
But then again, I would argue if they were going to build that as the Lord Nelsons, they would have done. Rather than, skipping them for dreadnought. But they clearly decided that the better thing to do was to build the Lord Nelsons conservatively and build a new ship on that design.
Yeah, it was... From what I remember reading, that specific and now probably ask Clark about this. It
Um,
was so much to do with the turbines being delayed, which
yeah,
led to the Lord Nelsons as we know them.
yeah. Knight, in regards to Agincourt being a testbed ship for the QER follow-on ships, she probably wouldn't have been.
No.
The R's, I've said this before, the whole thing with the R's is that the Royal Navy had gone, okay, we've built these world-beaten QEs, let's lock in that design, make it a bit cheaper, and build 10 of the bloody things, and put an end to this whole naval arms race debacle once and for all. That was the whole point. Get 10 R's into the battle line and just say, right, Germany, you're done. You're done. We're done with this farce of an arms race. Can we go back to building at a slightly less insane rate? Thank you.
No.
That is what the R's were supposed to be. That's why they ordered 10 of them.
The R's were originally a rerun of the QEs to an own group of 6. That then gets changed in World War One, where they get simplified.
From what?
As you'll notice, they are all laid down after the outbreak of war.
I have never heard that. Everything I've read on the Revenge class has had them as simplified ships from the start, with a build-out of either 8 or 10 ships to just put an end to the arms race once and for all.
So, okay, to a degree, they were simplified, but they were simplified versus the QEs in the way that they were largely more optimized. So they were improvements on the QE design.
The only redesign I see mentioned is that they, instead of being coal and oil mix, they were converted to be oil only. That's the only thing, as far as I can see. They were always intended to be smaller, cheaper, and slightly slower than the QEs. I'm not seeing anything that says they were just QE follow-ons.
Physical
As I recall,
books.
didn't they have a slightly updated armor scheme as well?
No, it's specifically, if I remember correctly, the number and the layout of the boilers.
Well, yeah, they were supposed to have they were supposed to have less boilers, and they were supposed to have coal and oil. They were supposed to be mixed firing in a reversion to the old ways of doing things to make them cheaper. But Jackie Fisher changed that in October 1914 when he redesigned them to have oil-fired boilers only.
Yes, but they were originally supposed to have a series of. Jackie Fisher had them redesigned to have 24 water tube boilers. That gets reduced after the outbreak of war down to 18 Babcock and Wilcock boilers. Hence why they're slower.
Yeah, but they were still only meant to do 23 knots as designed compared to 25 knots as designed. That's something that's important to bear in mind as well. I agree with you. I'm not denying that happened, but I am going to say they were still supposed to be smaller and slower.
Yeah, but it's less they were built to win the arms race. It was more their war-built ships because they've just gone to war. They just need
No, they were
more QEs.
No, they were supposed to be built to cement the British lead. That was the whole point of the class. Yes, they were yes. That's what I've read in the book on British battleships I've had, and it says it on Wikipedia as well. The whole point of the Avengers was build 8, and just by that point we have 5 QEs plus 8 Revengers. That gives you 13 15-inch battleships. And at that point, you've just completely knocked the Germans clean off any attempt to keep up with you.
Yeah, but specifically, that's when you get the Revengers with the 22 boilers.
Well, yes, I'm not denying that, but
they cut down into war builds with the 18 boilers.
Yes, but
when they're let down off the outbreak of war because
but
they're laid down in 1915.
Yes, but that still doesn't change the basic premise and reason for the ships existing. I'm not arguing what they became. I'm arguing what they were originally. Can we at least agree on that?
What they were supposed to be.
Yeah, what they were supposed to be, not what they became.
Because they were supposed to be reruns of the QEs.
No, they weren't. We've just been over
Yeah.
this. They were not supposed to be reruns of the QEs. It was supposed to be 8 ships that were slightly cheaper, slightly slower, use the old method of firing, build 8 of them, get them in the battle line, and just cement Britain's lead over Germany and end the naval arms race conclusively. They were absolutely not.
Yeah, okay. Technically, okay, I agree with you if you talk about the mixed firing ones. When they get converted by Fisher to full oil firing, they are in design slight optimizations and reruns to the QEs. And they're bulking out the QEs.
I have not seen that anywhere I've ever read. Not online, not in any of the books I've ever read on British battleships. It's always been that the plan was to build 8 Revengers that were cheaper, slower, ideally carrying 10, but accepting 8 15-inch guns, and to build 8 of them and have them be the conclusive end to the naval arms race with Germany. I don't know. I'm not denying you're wrong, Fox. I've never seen them as being follow-ons of the QEs, as in improvements / refinements to the QEs.
They directly are.
They're not.
They specifically are when it comes to their hull design.
Well, yes, but
Yeah, because
you are nitpicking now. You are nitpicking a little bit now.
it's like they're they're following to the QEs because internally and with their boiler layout, they are taking lessons from the designs of the QEs into a new design.
Yes. So
Be better optimized on the inside, so they're follow-ons from the QEs.
yes, they are. But again, as we've been saying, you've been talking as though it's mutually exclusive with my point of view, not something that can work alongside it. You need to be clear. You need to be clear. You need to be clear. Just say, yes, fleet, but they also are, instead of saying, no, they are this. Because then we would have avoided the whole competition.
Question. Oh, Hood's in the chat. Hello, hello, Hood.
There we go. Typical officer. Do you think the AR-15 rifles that have been manufactured by foreign companies like H&K, FN Herstall, Colt Canada, etc., have better quality and performance over AR-15s that have been produced by US companies? I have no fucking idea. I've never held or fired or even looked into an AR-15. I know it's fucking gun that everyone keeps talking about, but I know fuck all more than that.
This is a very, very subjective question. Technically, you could say yeah, but obviously, when HK charge you $5,000 for an AR-15, it better be, better. This is a subjective price point argument. The most important thing is, does it go bang? It goes bang? Good.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is, don't get any that have stick markings on them. Because it'll go bang uncontrollably.
That's more of a pistol thing, but I don't know whether that actually... I don't think that goes up to their AR stuff.
Anyway, next question.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Knight 6831. What was the 1913 Agincourt modification proposal? No one knows. We have speculations, but no one knows.
Not so much. We have the proposals, and we know they chose one. We do not know the one they chose, and the nature of the one they chose.
Exactly, as I said.
Yeah, but it's more of we know what the proposals are, we don't know the finalized design. So when you said we don't know the proposals...
So we have actually found the proposals then, finally. When were they found?
Quite a while back. But the issue is Dr. Clark keeps finding more proposals for it.
Right.
So we don't actually know which one that they're actually going to go with.
Yeah.
Because, ironically, they never actually went for any. Right. Mo, what's your favourite rally car?
I can only choose one, or
Yeah, just one of every decade.
every decade. I mean, some of the early. I like the Stratos back in the 70s, and then I have a preference for the 037. Obviously, I am not that much of a fan of the Quattro. I prefer the Delta S4 in terms of Ultimate Group B. And then I have a liking to the wackiness that is the RS200. And then pretty much by then I moved over to Subarus, with the single sole exception of the Toyota Celica GT4, I think it was. The one that cheated.
They all cheated, but yeah.
Well, no, okay, fine. The one that got caught cheating.
Yeah, I know which one you mean.
So, next question is...
The one where they had the electronic controlled overboost on it.
Yeah. So the next...
So while it was on the rally, it was producing more power.
Okay,
So,
let's not derail his thing.
Yeah. Clipper Officer asks, do you think the UK porpoise class is the best diesel electric submarine that was influenced by the German Type 21 sub design that other countries that tried to imitate the Type 21 on their own, like the US Tang class, Soviet Whiskey, or the Swedish Hagen 3? First things first, I'm going to remove the Hagen 3 from this competition and comparison. It is a small, coastal boat displacing less than 1,000 tons when submerged. None of the others displace less than 1,500 tons when surfaced. It should not be in the running. Secondly, but now that we've removed that, I'm going to unpopular opinion. The three classes of immediate post-war submarine construction are, to put it bluntly, much of a muchness. Porpoise, the Tang, the Whiskey, they're all much of a muchness. They're all roughly the same size, roughly the same speed, roughly the same endurance, roughly the same firepower. They're all much of a muchness. Do you know why? Because they're all drawing from the same fucking... same fucking thing. They're just tweaked slightly for what each navy wants. Anyone else have anything they want to add to that?
The answer is the porpoise. Because it was actually superior in a number of regards. It's not as much alike. The porpoise classes were noticeably quieter than other submarines. They were notably quieter than both Whiskies and Tangs. So, yeah, I would say the porpoise are probably the best of those ones for the immediate thing in that regard.
It also mostly depends on what people need, right? The US
Yeah.
has no choice but basically have the most range out of the three. Because they have to operate in the funny
Yeah.
Pacific.
Yeah, Tang's 11,500 nautical miles. Porpoise is 9,000. So
It's
Tang's got
like
longer range. Yeah.
if you want to put it in the key operating area, so the North Atlantic, then yeah, porpoise. Yeah, this is coming down to very nitpicky.
From what I'm reading, also
You
the tanks had to keep getting redesigned, so and having changes added to them. So that would also make me lean towards the porpoises.
Redesigns aren't necessarily a bad thing.
The first 4 tanks had to be explicitly lengthened. 5 and 6 were thankfully still on the ways and were able to be completely rebuilt on the thing. So no, that's not great.
1971. What would a British dreadnought protected cruiser look like? Because we know what a British 16 9.2-inch gun armoured cruiser is what a British dreadnought armoured cruiser would be like. Well, apart from the fact that the British dreadnought armoured cruiser is HMS Invincible. But that aside, there's no such thing as a British dreadnought protected cruiser or a British dreadnought light armoured cruiser. The whole dreadnought principle and the whole all big gun principle fundamentally falls flat when you realise that you can't fit directors on cruisers of this period.
You could.
No, you couldn't. You couldn't.
You
no,
could.
You couldn't.
If you built them big enough, you could.
Yes, you could if
The
you built them
C-class.
big enough. But yes, the C
The
class.
C-class.
The C class are not of this period. They are a decade later. I'm talking about 1906.
That right.
Yeah.
So then you need to specify a bit more there. Then.
Well, yeah,
but...
what it says we're talking
And also
about
the answer is then
dreadnought.
yes, you still can put a director on a cruiser of that period. It just depends if you build a big enough cruiser. A dreadnought cruiser, you could say, would just be something with 4 twin and 9.2-inch turret.
No, that's not
It's
what
a protected cruiser dragon.
Right. Even
what
then, even then, that
no,
then,
it doesn't
yeah, you
make
can get
it
along.
doesn't make any sense. It logically falls flat. It's a logical fallacy. You protected
It's
cruisers or
actually not.
light armored cruisers of this period.
Then, if you then technically speaking, if you're going off a dreadnought protected cruiser, actually, yes, the term does make sense because now you've just got a unified large caliber battery. So, if instead of a mix of 3, 4, and 5 and 6 inch, it's just one solid caliber,
That's not
probably
the
a
same.
5 or 6 inch.
That's
That it would be enough that most people would say, okay, I can see that definition, because part of the main definition of a dreadnought is all
Yeah.
big guns, a
Okay.
unified main battery.
I suppose in that case, then it already exists. It's called the towns. The Let Model Towns.
But that's
Towns
but
and
no, sorry,
vehicles.
Fleet. As you've just said, though, that's outside of the time period.
That is the wrong era, indeed.
Yeah,
But then you just bring that forward.
Okay, because the big issue of trying to dreadnoughtify a protected cruiser.
Oh wait, they actually did it. They did that. I just realised the topazes that were built in 1903, 1905 have a uniform 4-inch battery. They did that.
I wouldn't call that big. I wouldn't call that a big gun battery, though.
No, that is protected cruiser armament for the period. That is pretty much fair. That's 4-inch
Yeah,
gun. 4-inch guns are fine for the period. Absolutely fine.
No, because honestly, you could very much argue
When its
Britain stuck with them.
successors are being 6-inch,
Yeah, when it's
and
again.
its predecessor, the Amethyst. As a
Rapid
large
fire
armament than it.
rapid fire 4-inch guns are perfectly fine for the 1903 to 1910 period. Perfectly fine.
No, right. If you said 1903 to 1906, sure. Once you get to 1910 now,
No,
it's just
they
starting to get to the point where if you're going to be sending this cruiser against destroyers, sure, but once other protected cruisers are coming, no, because
No,
honestly, it would be very reasonable to say Britain stuck with the 4-inch gun on cruisers too long.
No, they really didn't. We have it borne out by experience in wartime of the German 105 cruisers doing very well against their British contemporaries without any real deficits brought on by them carrying 4 or 4.1-inch guns. They do perfectly fine. The only exception is when they run into ships well ahead of them technologically. Like, the Australians who have their all 6-inch armed town, which is like a ship a decade and...
You're telling me a cruiser designed with 4-inch guns in the early 1900s is perfectly acceptable against a cruiser with 4-inch guns in the early 1900s? That's fair enough. The problem is, your example you just used there isn't the early 1900s anymore. It's now the 1910s. Mid-1910s at that.
No, I'm saying that the German 4-inch cruisers at Jutland matched up against British cruisers with 6 and 4-inch guns, or British cruisers with 6-inch guns, and in the fleet action they did perfectly fine. They traded very well. This is not 1918 we're talking about here. This isn't the era of the the 4-inch gun is fine.
Because the thing is, though, from what I've read and what I'm looking at here, they didn't stack particularly well against the C-class when they engaged C-class.
Not the C-class!
They didn't do particularly well when they engaged Town class.
Yeah,
they did fine, from what I read.
And it's when you're claiming they were good enough, it's a case of... And then you're looking at the record of the C-class equipped with the 8.4-inch. And they're deemed... The 4-inch guns are deemed unsatisfactory.
Again, I will point out and say we are talking about a ship laid down in 1903, 1904.
But not for a dreadnought protected cruiser, we're not.
A dreadnought protected cruiser, you're probably looking what? 06, 07, probably, Foxo? Maybe even later?
07, 08.
I mean,
Yeah.
It has to be after the dreadnought.
I mean, at that point, then you just take the Topaz design, embiggen it slightly, run it through the printer, and I don't know, make it 5,000 tons instead of 3,000, and slap 6-inch guns on it.
You probably need to
When
go
you
a
start
little
to look
bit
at
over 5.
6-inch guns, you start to look at powered mounts, and the Topazes aren't powered mounts.
No, they're not. But again, you embiggen it. You just take.
No,
those...
you completely redesign. You don't just embiggen something.
Either way, whatever you do, you just take that basic principle. And you just get you get. But basically, again, you just get a town, but earlier.
No,
also,
you just get a Weymouth. You just get a Weymouth.
Yeah, because ideally, yeah, because also another thing is you'll probably swap over to steam turbines instead of triple expansion.
That's a town, Foxo.
Yes, that's what she's saying. Like, you don't just make a.
You don't embiggen the Topaz. You take a town.
But earlier,
Which were well, they were already being designed in 07, 08.
Yeah,
so...
they're built in 09.
Yeah, but you need to take the late model towns, not the early model
They
towns.
Oh no, Weymouth class were laid down 1909. Weymouth 1910. Early 19... The designs for them exist as back as 08.
Yeah, Weymouth was laid down January 1910. With Bristol and the Bristol subclass.
Either way, it doesn't really matter. We've arrived at the answer. Then it's just the Weymouths, basically.
Yeah, and if you want a dreadnought style, as in all main gun batteries center line firing,
you aren't getting that in this period. It's not.
Yes, you are.
You're not getting that until you get to the Hawkins.
You can actually get it earlier. This has been something that was looked at. You're still going with, but you'll be going with single mounts. Like the C class, as an example, actually could have been made a fair bit earlier with some slight differences.
But it's not really. You can't artificially rush that move towards the centerline mounts on cruisers. It's not. It's not something.
You can, though.
No, you cannot. you
The
cannot.
Royal Navy looked at it and had ideas, but it's a case of what's easier for us to produce. This or what we're currently doing?
No,
the
but-
answer is,
Yeah,
can we make it? Yes.
Because
But
as
we don't have
brought
a
up with
need to
Slayer
do so yet.
previously, it's a volume issue. A center line main battery takes up a lot of volume, even if they're only powered mounts.
I'm not even referring to necessarily much of a powered mount here, but yeah.
Because a 6-inch gun's gonna need a deck and hoist system.
And
Let's be real.
also, there is some merit to the whole idea that having the arrangement of guns along the sides does help when you're in a chase or you're running away. It means you can bring more of your armament to bear than if you had a centerline arrangement, which is also one of the other reasons that you can't really push centerline mounts forward, because that was the other major concern. There's volume as well, but there was also the idea that you want that. Again, it comes down to the whole thing with Dreadnought. You want the 3 guns able to fire forwards and the 3 guns able to fire aft, or the majority of your battery to be able to bear on a slightly off-angled bearing if you're in a chase or being chased.
Yeah, but the big thing is still volume.
Yeah.
Because protected cruisers do not have a lot of spare volume.
Yeah. Even the light armored cruisers like the Town just didn't have the internal space for it. Not to push a ship that comparatively small to the comparatively brisk speed in 1909 of 25 knots. Because bearing in mind, when the Towns come in, nobody's seen a cruiser with their arrangement of armor and firepower go as fast as they go.
Yeah, they enter the realm of the scout cruiser, because the only ships in the Royal cruiser-wise that match them are the actives.
Yeah. Like, it's really
and
hard.
The actives are anemic when it comes to armament.
Yeah, it's really hard to overstate what a step change the Towns were. Well, first of all, they were the first light armored cruisers the world ever saw, which we would then obviously term the light cruiser going forwards, or the cruiser going forwards, which is already a massive step change, but their speed as well. I suppose in a sense, they are, in all that sense, they are the Dreadnought protected or light armored cruiser. Whether they have the 6-inch guns or not. Shit, yeah. It is the Towns. They are the step change for the light cruiser that the Invincibles were for the armored cruiser and Dreadnought was for battleships. Yeah. Well, that was a nice little roundabout chase, wasn't it? It took us a while to get there, but...
No, because me and Fox have said this from the bloody beginning.
Yeah, but it took me a while to catch up. Anyway.
Yes.
And also it gave us a good chance to talk about, the way in which cruisers evolved. And it gave Fox a chance to go off on that really nice tangent about, volume and power mounts.
Volume, actually looking into it, volume's not as much of a concern, though. Looking at the actual mounting, but mounting and actual things is not as large as one might want to think.
Yeah, but it's volume, it's additional volume consumption in a very volume-taxed environment.
And you've got the other thing that I mentioned as well about, the desire to keep forward firepower in an age before the twin or triple turret being excellent on small ships.
That doesn't really work either, though, but because at most you're getting 3 guns forwards on most of these designs.
Yeah. That's actually...
Yeah, you can work with 2, and also even the 6-inch ones you can still get 3.
It's still better than 1 forward.
Why would you only have 1 forward?
Because if you're in a C class and you're chasing, and you're on either a direct bearing behind or a slight off angle, you really can't bring the rest of your battery to bear. The blast effects will blow your own superstructure off.
Yeah, but you also can't afford super firing.
It wouldn't blow your own superstructure off, as they found it didn't. But anyway, moving on.
Gunnery Officer, in terms of USN, SSN, why did the older SSN designs like the Skipjack have a higher submerged top speed than its successor, the Permit class? 33 knots versus 28. Why did the USN downgrade the top speed? Quieting.
Yeah.
The Skipjacks were bloody quick, but they were fucking noisy. They were fucking noisy submarines. And by the time you got They were also the last of the generation of nuclear submarines designed more to hunt surface ships than they were to hunt other submarines, where the attack profile up to the skipjacks was run-in, and also in the period before ASW had caught up with nuke boats, they were the last subs to be designed in that era, where the attack profile for a nuclear submarine was dash in at maximum speed, torpedoes away, dash out at maximum speed, laughing as the escorts fail to catch or kill you. The arrival of stuff like RBU 6000, ASW helicopters with lightweight anti-submarine torpedoes, towed array sonar on ships, and ships carrying lightweight anti-submarine torpedoes that could exceed the speed of a submersible like the skipjack rendered that whole attack profile moot. And also the shift towards the submarine as an anti-submarine asset as well. At that point, speed didn't matter, quieting and sensors did.
Even then, the skipjacks is a really good argument of the speed's unnecessary because you can't outrun a torpedo unless you're an alpha.
Yep. This is the thing, it's why there was
Yeah.
a big shift away in both the Russian and American navies away from that. Yeah, it's basically once the lightweight ASW torpedo, or even the heavyweight wire-guided torpedo from submarines, becomes a thing, that high speed is no longer valuable.
It's better to be not heard.
Mm-hmm. 96831 asks, how would the Greek Vasilis Konstantinos class battleship stack up against the Turkish Reşadiye class battleship? Terribly. One is a Britannia, one is a basically Iron Duke but for the Turks. I am sorry, but a Britannia does not win a fight against an Iron Duke, if all things are equal. The only way the Greeks win that fight is if the Ottomans let their if they literally wait for the Ottoman ships to degrade in crew quality, and then they pick the fight. Then they might have a chance of winning it. But if it's all things being equal, the Reşadiye class walks away with that every single time. Every single time. Because the Britannia is just so vulnerable. They are so vulnerable. Whereas the Reşadiyes have a chance of resisting the Britannia's guns. The Britannias just have nowhere at all that Reşadiye cannot easily get shells into really, really, really vulnerable parts of the ship. Like, I don't know, the main magazines, the barbettes of the main guns. Whereas the Reşadiye might actually resist shells hitting those places. I've been waiting for this.
Not that far, but yeah.
Yeah, buying the Reşadiye is one of the best decisions the Ottoman Navy made pre-war. They were a really solid choice. The Greeks ordering Salamis was a good counter, but trying to buy a Britannia, just why? I know you wanted.
Panic buying.
We're really good at buying.
Panic buying.
Yeah, I know you really wanted to hedge your bets, Greece, but the US would have been a better bet. Oh, dear.
Never underestimate the power of contract kickbacks.
Indeed. So I think we're nearly actually through week but last round. Yeah, we are nearly through. Yeah, nice. We're actually nearly through the first of the two we've got to cover.
Yay! Woo! Woo! Woo!
The Dutchman is here to provide morale support. Excellent. Typical Gunner Officer asks, why did the US designate the why did the US designate the twin-engine A-20 and A-26 bomber as A for an attacker aircraft? Because they were. They were the twin-engined heavy attack and strike aircraft of the US Army Air Force. The A-20 and the A-26 are what you sent in when you wanted to blow up something that was substantial, or you didn't think your P-47s or whatever you were using had enough ordnance, but you wanted a little bit of precision, and you didn't want to remove grid coordinates, which is what you would call the bloody heavies for.
They're what you would call a frontline bomber.
Basically, yeah. Although there is a gap between them and stuff like the B-25, because the B-25 was solidly a tactical bomber.
Yeah, that's not a frontline bomber.
Yeah.
Yeah, but consider that the A-20 is introduced in 1941. So it's not going in alongside P-47, it's going alongside P-36 and... Is it 39? P-40, sorry.
39, 40s, you know, that's
Yes,
same
but
pile of stuff.
a bomber is in essence an offensive weapon. It fulfills an offensive role, and the question answers itself. As a bomber is an
Yeah.
attacking aircraft.
It offers...
No. Attacker is a different role to a bomber.
It offers a...
But I mean in the sense that
air
it fulfills an
support
offensive
platform.
role.
Yeah, but
But
by
it's
that
used to
logic, every
attack the
fighter
enemy.
every fighter is also a bomber. Because they attack the enemy.
Exactly. Every aircraft is a bomber.
We're now reaching into the doctrinally radical portion of the discussion.
Oh boy.
No. We're now reaching into the 1970s US Air Force debate. It's a fighter. Is it a fighter? Is it a bomber? Is it a fighter bomber or is
No,
it an
it's
attacker?
Superman!
Why
In
not all of the above?
In the end, the answer wasn't no. It's the F-16.
I too love all of the above.
Well, it does fundamentally mean that the bomber will always get through.
Because it's always different things and all the time.
The bomber will
well,
always
because
get
everything
through,
is
and the
a
bomber
bomber.
can dogfight the enemy fighter
Everything is a bomber.
and win.
Challenger's
hey.
bomber. All planes are both bombers and not bombers until observed.
Everything
as
can
as
be
soon
bomber.
as you start putting bomb locks on a fighter, they are Schrodinger's bomber.
Schrodinger's.
It's alright. We'll very soon reach the point where a B-1 is going to score aerial kills.
Okay, to be
Because
fair,
they'll just strap 20 AMRAAMs on it.
isn't there a proposal for? Wasn't there a test back in the day when Meteor came out with what aircraft in the US Army could US Air Force could actually mount the thing? Well, the aircraft they tested was the B-1.
Yeah, probably. I'm
Because
just saying,
Chuck-
like,
Took
We're
telegraph
just-
poles at AWACS aircraft.
yeah, we're just getting to the point where even bombers are getting into the aerial hunting,
Yeah.
part of the war.
It's now time
So
for...
what you're saying is every bomber is also a fighter.
Yes,
'Cause-
very soon you'll see a buff with an aerial kill.
Because remember, even as far back as the 70s, bombers were
you do
actively hunting
realise...
aircraft by frying them
you do
with
realise
their
that...
radar and jamming equipment.
You do realise the buff does have aerial kills, right?
Yeah.
It got them in Vietnam. Tail gonna go brrr.
But no, I mean like in an offensive role, not
Oh
a
my
defensive role, obviously.
Buff can do anything.
Well, yeah.
Oh dear.
The
Oh,
F-35 in front of me is painting the target. I'm just releasing the payload. Teehee.
Teehee. Happy times. Okay. Oh yeah, the B-52 actually got kills in Vietnam. Yeah, they actually shot stuff down. Both the quad 50 cal variant and the rotary cannon variant got kills. So, next question. 1971, all the Daring class get their PAMs, and the AAO Plessy Midas, which is British Sieges with additional mods to cope with the extra power. How long would it take for that to get matched? Considering that 45 is Still lacking VLS depth compared to even a Flight 1 Burke. And Flight 3 Burke exists. Even if Midas is an Aegis equivalent, Flight 3 Burke is sat right there looking at you funny. And if we're talking about the Type 45s instead being built with the fictional British Aegis equivalent from Against All Odds, and the British Totally Not an SM2 Missile Be Sweargov from Against All Odds, again, the Arleigh Burke with equivalent systems is sat right there, only it's got more VLS cells. So, again, it's already been matched. I'm sorry, but 45 is the bare minimum for the air defense destroyer and always has been. It's not a bad ship, make no mistake, but Burke is right there.
What's the context of this, sorry?
Basically, if the Type 45s have been built with the fictional, British Aegis equivalent from that web thing where the British Empire doesn't decline / becomes a Commonwealth / whatever.
Right.
And got equivalent missiles to standard missile, basically. And how long would it take for that to get matched? I just pointed out that the Arleigh Burkes already exist in the real world.
Well, the Arleigh Burkes don't exist in that timeline.
Well, no, he's talking about the IRL Darings getting the fictional systems. And he hasn't given them more VLS or anything else, so the Burkes are right there. You want 45 to be unsurpassable for a while, you've got to make it bigger and give it more VLS cells than a Burke.
Don't go that far.
You do. In an air defense role, it's not just sensors that matter, you need the VLS depth. Like, Type 45 is absolutely fine. It's an absolutely fine ship. We just don't have enough of them. But if you want to talk about something that is not going to be surpassed for a while, it is the Arleigh Burke. Because it is the best in Class AA warfare ship and has been since its introduction. That's just...
To be fair.
That's just...
Name a navy that doesn't have enough ships.
True. You know what I mean, though. I'm not trying to... I'm not bashing 45 here. I'm just saying, if we are talking, frankly, about the best anti-air warfare platforms on the high seas, it is the Arleigh Burke or the Asian ships that are inspired by her. The Japanese and Korean Aegis destroyers. And Arleigh Burke Flight 3.
Nah. Tycons.
Yes. Tycho's Aegis system isn't as good as Flight 3 Burke.
But the Tychos have Jesus fuck levels of sensors.
That is true, and they do have more VLS than even Flight 3 Burke
And
does.
more VLS.
That is true. So I think the
And
Tychos...
they have a lot more sustainment in the air war.
Yeah, actually, how many VLS does the Shidong the Great class have? Because if they have more than the Tychos and they are more modern, then they would be...
128? Well, the first batch is 128, and then the Koreans realized that's way too much VLS for this hull. So the second batch actually has less.
And how much does the Tychos have?
114 was it?
Yeah, 122.
Okay.
So yeah, it is good. So the world's best anti-air warfare combatant currently is the
Tychos.
It's the Shidong the Great class Aegis destroyers.
Well,
It's the Tychos.
It's not. It's the Sejong the Greats because they have more VLS cells and better sensors.
someone might make the argument for Type 55s, but
We haven't seen them test them. We don't know what their systems are capable of.
Yeah, we also haven't seen Shijong the Great tested, so I'll stick with the Tychos, thank you.
Yeah, but the Sejong the Greats have the proven Aegis system and standard missiles, so we know what that's capable of.
Yeah, but we don't know if the ships are capable of it. The human body is capable of running up to 24 mile an hour. That don't mean I can run 24 mile an hour.
All right. Okay. Ships that have proven themselves in air warfare in active combat, the Tychos. For ships that have the potential to be good and based on their raw statistics, the Sir John the Greats. There, everyone wins. And everyone's happy. Moving on.
It's
Compromise.
just two Sejong the Greats, by the way. It's just
Yeah.
two of them.
Okay. Typical gunnery officer asks, why didn't the US adopt the Gibbs & Cox FFG design instead, since it's more affordable, rapid buildable, and configurable to the US end's needs? I have no idea what this ship is. I'm going to have to go and poke it with a sledgehammer. 1 second. Fleet
You can
to-
poke it, and I will tell you exactly what's wrong with it.
I'm just going to have a look. Let's have a look. What are you? Hang on a minute. Isn't that just bloody Constellation?
No. It's a indigenous American design for it by an American company.
I do not know enough
It's a
about this ship to
New,
make a...
I think it's an up and coming. It's an up and coming company, but basically, the entire problem with that design, because that's the design that the Taiwanese frigate is based on. The new ones they're planning to build at like 2,500 tons. It's very simple. Look at the range of the Gibson Cox, and then look at the range of the cutter.
Where's the gun? Where's the Gibbs & Cox frigate's gun?
In the front.
I don't see it.
You're probably looking at the wrong picture.
Oh, there it is.
It's a fairly standard frigate design with, I think, 16 BLS cells or something like that.
I am confused as to
the
what...
template they put
Yeah, you know,
out is.
I am really confused why they've got that dip in the superstructure amidships with box launchers. Just raise it up and add more Mark 41. It'll give you infinitely more capability for a very slight increase in cost. Why have this dip for box launchers? That just seems like a design failure.
Because box launchers can be reloaded at sea.
That's a good point.
BLS can't be.
No, that's a good point, Foxo. Well said. That's a very good point.
But yeah, basically, for the US Navy, this design has nowhere near the range it needs. And if you
Yes.
start scaling this thing up, you're gonna run into the exact same problem the Constellation is gonna get into.
Mhm. Yep. Yep.
There is a really, really big advantage with the Legend class cutter. They could go 12,000 nautical miles. Sure, they're underarmed as fuck, but at least they'll be there. Instead of, hogging up your logistical line and your supply ships.
I mean, no, some people like Moe. The first batch of 4 cutters may as well not be there. They have a single 57mm gun, and that's it.
You'd be surprised by just a random existence of a random ship and how useful that could be.
I suppose, but the US has OPVs. Like, the US has its OPV force. The next question is from Knight.
yeah.
I'm just waiting. Just talk with yourselves for a minute. I'm just waiting on a confirmation from Knight in YouTube chat. So please talk about rally cars for a little bit. I'll be back in just a second, as well.
Okay. Random.
I think he's more referring to what Foxo was talking about earlier.
I know.
Yeah.
But
But why do we have to talk about rally car?
She brought it up. I don't know. I don't know. Yeah,
Also known as that time Toyota cheated in World Rally Series with very early ECUs having a series of different boost settings for when you were rallying and when you were testing. So their engines gave the regulated amount of horsepower when tested by the authorities. They gave more in the field.
they got
So
50
that's
more
where
horsepower
Volkswagen
compared to
got the
everybody else.
idea.
So then when everybody's going down the straight and Toyota is beating everybody out the wazoo, it's just like something isn't right here.
Yeah.
He thinks there is some foul play occurring.
That's the only reason why they got caught too, because they got caught at like the second last stage of the year.
It was Finland, wasn't it?
I think it was Finland, which makes sense. Finland's the one that has all the stupidly long straights.
Yeah,
because they're all just that's not rallying; they're just jumping. It's just flying and flying and flying.
Yeah, or you get these few corners where you're jumping and turning at the same time.
Yes. Which is great because everybody's just like, they're cheating, and they go for the testing, and it's just like, no, they're not, and it's just like, test it again, and that's when they caught it the second time.
Yeah. Oh, because they didn't catch it by testing the engine. They went back to a stage and they had the car run that stage while being monitored. So Toyota did the down tune on it for the amount of boost the engine had. And yeah, Timo?
To be fair, I think the big thing is the teams weren't just saying they're cheating in Finland. They have been screaming at FIA that they've been cheating in multiple courses, to the point where the FIA was telling Toyota, disassemble your car down to every single nut and bolt and reassemble it again.
Yeah.
And they still couldn't find anything, wrong with it.
And it's because of their nature, rally car engines tend to be pretty overbuilt anyway.
Okay, thank you.
Punishment they go through, but
yeah, thank you very much, everybody. Much appreciated.
Actually, no, quickly.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. Yeah.
Because Ferrari recently in Formula 1 got caught doing something similar, and the engines have sensors in where they detect boost pressure. And Ferrari were found to get more power out the engine because that sensor only reads every 400 milliseconds, and it takes an instance every 400 milliseconds, right? So Ferrari created a system in the car where it would be at a higher boost, except for those instances every 400 milliseconds.
What?
That was the fuel feed. There's a limited amount of fuel. Yeah, it's a limited amount of fuel you could squirt into the engine, and there's a sensor. And basically, every 400 milliseconds, they check it, and all Ferrari did is they pump more fuel when the sensor isn't checking, which is impressive if you think about it.
Yeah, Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, so 9681. If the British developed the British Aegis equivalent, because I'm really getting my tongue tied saying that whole thing out loud. And it was around as an alternative to the British Aegis, and I asked him to confirm it means IRL. Who outside the Royal Navy is likely to go for it? Europe. The European navies are likely to buy into this British system rather than buying into Aegis. If it's there and it functions, yeah, it'll probably be a lot cheaper than buying into Aegis, as a lot of European navies did do, like the Dutch and the Germans and other people, because the British system will be right there and probably will be a little bit cheaper than Aegis will be.
When did this system get?
Presumably, it would probably be around for I don't know, let's say early 2000s, which is when a lot of European navies are looking to build their next generation anti-air combatants. It's when the French are looking at it. It's when the Dutch are looking at building what will become the De Zeven Provinciën class frigates, Aegis frigates as we know them historically. It's when the British are looking at Type 45.
Yes.
If you've got this this British Aegis equivalent, then you'd likely, especially since it's the era when, you know, Britain is still very much pro-Europe and Europe is very much tolerating Britain, I can definitely see the European navies that need such ships going for that rather than Aegis. And you'd have Aegis as very much seen as an American as an American Asian system, and the British system being seen as very much a European system. But that's just my guesstimate. I've no idea whether they actually would or not. It would depend on policy decisions and how successful the system actually is. And of course, the French being the French, and of course, the French being the French are probably going to still develop their own system we historically have for Type 45 and their frigates and destroyers, and still develop the Aster missile because they're the French, and the French do what the French do because they are the French.
Because there's this very slim possibility in the 2000s when the Chinese are politically not, you know, hated by everybody, they might snatch it up.
There were a lot of technology transfers that the West was willing to do with China. I am not entirely sure if giving them a full Aegis-like system would be one of them.
Well, you never know. This is the very questionable era of Chinese political system of we have no idea what the fuck they're going to do for the next 20 years.
It looks like China's liberalizing.
Pretty much. They're basically on free. They're pretty much on like a free market.
Stability and profit, economic growth over everything else.
And basically, as long as the people in the parties can, you know, get their share, who cares?
Yeah, it was basically, as long as economic line go up and China stays stable, just fucking go. Just fucking go.
Don't forget, this is the era when, you know, 20% of the Chinese economy comes from a single city.
Yeah. Right, okay, I'm gonna, so I'm fairly certain we've answered this exact question before in a Ramblings, but we'll make it very quick, since Fox, I think, can answer it in 1 or 2 words. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, do you think the M7 Spear with its 6.8mm cartridge is a downgrade for the US Army from the AR-15 platform, and do you think other NATO countries like the UK, Germany, etc., adopting or retaining the AR-15 platform, I presume the thing is the correct decision?
Yes.
Yes.
There we go. And moving swiftly on.
The body armor that the Spear is designed to defeat has not come into maturity.
As simple as this. Like we said before, the 6.8 cartridge would have been useful 20 years ago in Afghanistan. Now you're trying to adopt something that you no longer need.
Foxo, this next one is entirely for you.
Okay.
Because this is right up your street. 9631 asks,
fun.
if the British Empire turned into a Commonwealth, given Vickers Armstrong is too large to merge with others, what's the probable outcome for British aviation instead of BAC and Hawker Siddeley, and presumably the end state being BAE? If you've got a Britain that's a Commonwealth with a massive captive market for aviation, basically, is there enough on the plate for the British aviation industry to keep going?
No.
No?
To put it simply, I'm getting cold, Bob. Back in a second.
Bugger. Man up, woman overboard. Someone throw her a life ring.
The problem is just basically comes down to
I'm back.
there isn't a British project. There isn't really a British aviation project that really, went through decently in the 70s.
Yes, but it's also down to the fact that there was
It's not that
limited.
it's British aviation got into a lot of fucking crippling debt in World War II. Government has to renew that debt repeatedly. This means the industries don't have enough to recapitalize.
I mean,
Any scenario where World War II happens and we have a recognizable aerial industry, you're going to have that issue no matter what, because the economy's fucked because of the world wars.
even a Commonwealth in the aftermath of such a conflict is not going to have unlimited money going around.
The Commonwealth, until you get to the 60s and 70s, is unprofitable.
I could see one way this could turn out.
I mean, just
Instead of a merge,
just to go. Sorry, go on. You first, Moe, and then I'll say what I want to say.
instead of a merge, Vickers Armstrong buys the British aviation industry and turns them into a subsidiary.
I was actually thinking the opposite. Vickers Armstrong will probably be focusing on its profitable endeavours, well, when it's not running itself into bankruptcy by incompetent management. But we'll probably be focusing on trying to strike the lucrative market of all these new independent Commonwealth states who are, because of the way this Commonwealth is set up, because it's not the Commonwealth as we know it, it's a much more soft imperialism rather than free Commonwealth. They'll be tapping into the captive market for projects and infrastructure from these new states.
No.
They may spin off their aviation arm to offer it up for sale, for God's sake.
No.
No.
Okay, to begin with, Vickers' downfall is half incompetent management and half crippling debt. Because of the World War II and parts of to a lesser degree World War One, Vickers has lost about 60% of its cash flow. Because the real money maker for Vickers was their minority stakes in the rest of the world. The only country that's building ships in this time period they don't have a large minority stake in are some of the American yards.
Fair enough.
Like, they have stuff like a minority stake in Crop before World War II.
Well,
And they get a lot in dividends from that. And Vickers makes the big bucks by developing licenses for those countries to produce on their own, or being a contractor working for their companies they've got stakes in.
yeah.
That's why you can find Vickers' hands everywhere, because they de facto transitioned into less of an industrial group, more of a industrial contractors.
But given we are...
And no, let me finish. And they are forced by the British government with rearmament and then World War II to go into a massive amount of debt. And the British government based the amount of debt they think Vickers can sustain off their pre-war income.
Oh dear.
Vickers, post-war, has lost 60% of that income.
Oh dear.
And they're desperately trying to stay afloat. Vickers gets ripped apart because they start defaulting.
So
Vickers gets leveraged into what we know as BAE because parts of it are defaulting.
So basically, in this post-war Commonwealth, British Empire survives, whatever, it's honestly going to be Vickers that goes, and perhaps other companies that might or might not stay. I mean,
No, 'cause
especially when, can I quickly, especially when you consider that the US firms that do a lot of the destroying aren't extant, given that the US is sat over there being communist for some fucking reason. And you might still have imperial preference knocking around rather than the US forcibly opening the imperial market. So you might not have stuff like the 707 crushing the Vickers VC-10 or BAOC buying the Stratoliner instead of a domestic British product.
Yeah, but the issue is when it comes to costs, that's like the CEO of OpenAI choosing not to eat a Mars bar today to save money.
Right.
It's technically a saving, but the actual industrial side of Vickers can't sustain the mass that the company is.
Well, then, like I said, but surely then at that point, as I've said, Vickers will probably collapse, leaving the British given, and then at that point you'd have to have other companies come in and try and fill the void in this Commonwealth.
The issue is that Vickers of all of them are in the best situation. Vickers is bleeding out slowly, but the rest of the companies are in even worse situations. De Havilland's going to start defaulting. English Electric is too small to do a lot of the military contracting.
Yeah,
and not so much too small as in they don't have enough excess outside of repairing their own infrastructure to take this on.
This is the thing, Knight. It's all well and good to write up a world where Britain comes out of World War II stronger, but unfortunately, if World War II happens, you cannot fix the chronic problems with British industry after World War II.
Well, it's not that. It's the war for Britain to come out stronger has to end by 43, because the government starts to default on debt in 1943. And the debt it starts to default on is the debt to its own arms industry. That leaves a lot of companies out of pocket.
Yeah.
Because those companies who make the equipment to give to the government, that the government then is taking on as debt, are taking out debt themselves. And then when the government starts defaulting on that debt, and in 44 the Americans come and the Americans start bailing those industries out, the Americans stop doing that after the war ends.
Mm-hmm.
It's that sort of... It's why the industry is never able to recapitalize, because it's already cannibalized itself. There's nothing... There's nothing there to hedge to get loans.
Jesus
Who
fucking Christ!
Get money.
There's... Whoever was writing AAO completely lost their fucking nut.
Go on.
The war ends 31st of March 1947!
Huh?
And they have to kill the fucking Soviets who are aligned with the Germans as well.
Depends on how history goes previously. It is potentially doable if things don't go the way it does naturally in our history.
Yeah, because as much as we don't like to admit it, if the British Empire, if they're fighting the Italians and the Germans and the Japanese, without direct American assistance financially, the Empire defaults in 43 and has to drop out of the war in 43 because it runs out of money.
It is worth
In
pointing
this
out
timeline, the Americans aren't there.
they are there from 42, but they are the communist Americans, and it's a lot colder a war. The Americans are just focusing on dealing with the. I think the Americans are just focusing on dealing with the Japanese with some aid to Britain. I think.
Yeah, but are we talking no questions asked? Giving the UK 3% of the GDP of the empire a year.
I have no idea. It's not very descriptive, this wiki. It's hard to tell.
What it sounds very confusing.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure... Because I'm really struggling to figure out how Britain comes out of this in any other way than just completely, utterly broken. Because if it's in the war from 39 to 47, and with America being communist and so probably unwilling to do anything to aid Britain financially, even if they are in the Allies and fighting the same enemies, I have no idea. Judging by the fact that the counterattack doesn't begin until 43, with Japan only losing at that point, and Axis troops only being defeated in North Africa at that point, I do have to wonder if Britain played it a lot more cautiously and might have even demobilized its economy partially to try and... Since there would have been no indication the US would join. Unlike in our timeline, which might have given the British more legroom. But even then, I question how
Are
much...
nukes deployed in this timeline?
They are, apparently. I think that's
Yeah,
part of the
Because
reason how they get...
I can see a route where Britain plays it defensively until they have nukes, and then just starts going ham with nukes.
The problem is that...
No. Britain can't do that, and they can't demobilize, because what does the economic damage is the U-boats.
Yeah, and you've also got the problem that you can't just wait for them to keel over, because you're fighting you're fighting Eurasia. You're fighting Italy, Germany, and the Soviets all on one fucking team.
Yeah. And the issue is that you can't play defensively if you're the British against the U-boats, because you have to mass build your escort forces, which was fucking expensive. You're gonna have to mass expand the Royal Navy, which is fucking expensive. And the issue is, to get back to the question, British arms industry that ends that comes out of war ending in 45 is beaten, bloody, and broken, and in crippling debt. If the war lasts longer, that's going to be worse. And even if those companies are able to keep producing goods throughout the war, the debt given to do that is going to break the economy when the war ends. And those companies have to shut down and default in their debt, because you've got debt numbers that are four or five times the value of the company.
And also, there isn't going to be a Marshall Plan.
Yeah.
There's no Marshall Plan either to rebuild Europe. Britain can't do it. You're going to be left with a world that basically has the communist US basically winner by default.
There's a massive manpower issue I see as well.
Yeah, you'll have a Europe that is you'll have a Eurasia that is broken, bloodied, with the US offering no help, but perhaps submit to communist takeover and maybe we'll bail you out. Russia's gonna be ruined. Germany's gonna be ruined. France is gonna be a shadow of its former self. Poland is probably just depopulated at this point. Given they'll have to endure 8 years of joint Germano-Russian occupation, resisting all the while. The Holocaust will have been allowed to go on 2 more years, with the Russians also probably contributing, so God knows how many people that's killed. The British Empire is a broken ruin. The Japanese are also dead as well. China's sorting itself out. The only nation
even more fucked.
The only nation that comes out of this is the communist US, and they are sat as global hegemon. And there's nothing anyone else can do about it. Even if a lot of American companies do flee to Canada, that's a lot of American companies fleeing the US. And even if America does see a brain drain, it's kind of hard to overstate the sheer level of Jesus fucking Christ the US has going for it in the 30s and in the 1900s as a century.
That is, the US has the population and the physical factories. Unless it's pulled a TFR.
As far as I'm aware, the transition to a socialist government was one done at the ballot box, not by revolution. As far as I'm aware, Foxo.
Okay.
But it spooks a lot of companies just to flee for the hell of it, because Red Scare moment, 1920s. Which I know is a massive leap of logic, but I don't think AAO is Brit wank. Like, let's be clear here. It is massive Brit wank. Like, that is what it is. Yeah. Anyway, so next question. Lord Chandler, are politicians fairies? Who the hell knows? They certainly act like them, sometimes.
Oh, politicians aren't fairies because fairies can't lie. Lawyers, however.
Yeah, she's right there.
Yeah, I see the play.
Yeah, no, I get that. Yeah, that's pretty good. Oh, okay. So, yeah, so Knight6831 asks, if the British Empire turned into a Commonwealth, which is now AAO, as we know, how likely is it the Vickers MBT blunder didn't happen and the Vickers MBT proved successful? The British Empire isn't going to have any money for the military post-war beyond perhaps maintaining the navy and colonial garrisons. There definitely aren't going to be any post-war tank programs. And there definitely aren't going to be any post-war aviation programs beyond what's absolutely necessary. What Britain needs to keep the Commonwealth together is a modern Royal Navy and a semi-decent Air Force. You can keep the colonial / new republics and Commonwealth members in line with the good old Lee Enfield and the Bren gun.
Not really anymore. Not really.
Did you say the New Republic?
New Republic.
No.
Anyway.
But tank-wise, all you're going to see is a Centurion. Because they've already done the work to get Centurion working.
Well, by 47, it will have seen action in Europe against the Soviets in the last days of that war.
And then you get Centurion 105.
Yeah.
And you might get Fat Centurion.
That's Carnarvon, isn't it?
Yeah. And Konkek.
Yeah. Now, you might... Depends on... I mean, you might be able to make some money back for certain programs by selling off war surplus to the various parts of the Commonwealth that are being granted independence gradually. But that's not going to be a massive revenue stream at all.
Well, you're not doing stuff like the Mark 1 or the Mark 3.
No. Vickers will be... You'll have massive defaults across the...
I don't know why you might not see the Vickers MBT. Because at this point, that's 20 years later.
Because Vickers will be gone by that point, given the way this war
Yeah.
has been going and the way the British Empire is. There's no Marshall Plan to reject finances into the government. There's no...
Yeah. So,
And the
from
war's
my
gone on...
histories
Go
of
on.
Vickers Armstrong, they were in threat of defaulting in 1946 with the post-war drawdown, with the historical debt numbers, and they get bailed out.
Now the war in
See, now that's not stuff that I've found. And not stuff that's in the history of the area for Vickers, so I'd be intrigued.
And then-
Because this isn't the subsidiaries that make up Vickers. This is the overall Vickers
Vickers, yes,
entity.
Vickers Armstrong, yes.
Yes. The corporate entities
and
pushing
bearing-
bankruptcy.
Entity. Singular at this point, primarily. Because Vickers Armstrong is the company. It was only afterwards was it broke into smaller bits.
Yeah.
But either way, if it's defaulting on, you just, I mean, you're gonna have to
But-
see rationalization of the British, never mind armaments industry generally over the course of the 50s and 60s, rapidly, to try and salvage the national economy. God knows where they're gonna get and God knows where the government's gonna get the finance to keep going, unless Europe collectively decides, with America out of it and Britain and France left as the only real creditors, quote unquote, left, they just decide to do something monumentally drastic like resetting finances rather than dealing with despair. Which I know sounds daft, but
On the other hand, you also don't have the US taking the entirety of the UK's gold reserve. So the UK actually still has something to back its currency.
I do have to question whether or not that wouldn't have gone by 1947.
Considering the only reason why it was gone historically was the US literally stormed in and took it.
What?
Yeah, you are familiar with what ends up happening to the final British gold reserves, right, in World War II.
No.
But Churchill had to try begging them to not take it, and they said, no, we're coming in anyway. Went to the gold reserves and took it, because technically speaking, in the agreement, the US were meant to take it. Churchill basically was saying, look, no, if you take this from us now, after war, we're going to have basically an economics crash. The US said the US didn't really care because a deal was a deal in their eyes. And then this caused major financial crash post-war, and who would have guessed? It's part of the reason why British communists jump up in the post-war period. Now, will this save it? Perhaps not, but it means the UK at least has more to play with potentially.
And of course, but this is all caused by the British starting to default on debts caused that they've accrued with Lend-Lease.
But if they're not getting Lend-Lease, they're not having those debts.
Yeah.
Hell, you probably don't even see destroyers for
Which
bases.
means that you haven't distributed the debt to the governments, the debts from mandatory production are still being rested on the shoulders of the companies, which means you put Vickers in even more debt.
Hmm.
And you put Vickers in a debt spiral. More than it already was.
And that's and then add in 2 extra years of war.
It actually is a wartime production. And the fact the UK, if I remember correctly, in this timeline has had to shoulder the cost of developing a nuclear weapon.
Yeah, since, well, while both the Americans and the UK do develop one, they have to do it separately.
Yeah, and a good reason the British transfer over tube alloys and their research that continues after the Tizard mission in 43 and 44 is because they're offloading the cost into the Manhattan Project. If they can't do that and they still get a nuclear weapon, they're paying for it up front with debt.
That's also going to make the Empire a lot more shaky, because I guarantee you that there probably will be loans from the colonies as well, and from the Commonwealth and from the Dominions, which Britain is going to struggle to repay.
There's going to be a lot of debt to the Indian princes, and the Brits are going to let the Indian princes in return to whatever the hell they want in India.
Yeah, that's
which means post-war India likely goes bang.
Yeah, that's the one part of a non-declined British Empire I could always see happening. India just nopes out of there.
Okay. This is going to be
No.
This is a significantly different history, considering the fact that effectively Canada is under siege from communist America in 1938.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm saying. I don't think much can be said about this, because there is so much that has changed in ways you can't really tell.
Yeah, and also, given the way that the world is, I don't think Britain would fight the war the same way they did historically.
I don't think they do, is what brief bit I'm quickly reading through, trying to get through quick by skimming. Things go very, very differently.
Well, it has to.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to a Discord question. Hello, James. Sorry, we got a little bit deep into that one. Hello, James. Sorry about that. I meant to say hello.
It's all right.
Well, actually, I'm glad you're here. It'll be good to have an ex-RN officer for this next question. In fact, I'll get.
Wasn't enough, so was I?
Oh, sorry, no rating, but still XRN, either or. Anyway, Tilgary officer asks, in terms of today's Baltic Sea navies, which navy or country could control and establish a large presence in the Baltics? The Poles, the Germans? For me personally, if you want to talk about controlling and a large presence, it's a three-way tie between the Swedes, the Russians, and the Germans.
And the Poles.
The Poles don't have the mass.
They're building it pretty quickly.
Yes, but right now they don't have the mass.
Yeah, but neither do the Germans currently.
No, the Germans have enough frigates to do the job, and enough subs.
And in that sort of environment, the 212s are lethal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Cole.
Okay. Yeah, because you've got 6 U-boats, 4 Brandenburg-class frigates, 3 Saxon-class frigates, and 4 Baden-Württemberg-class frigates, and then 6 corvettes. That gives you a decent amount of mass to project into the Baltic. Whereas the Poles right now only have 2 frigates and 2 corvettes, along with 3 fast attack craft and 1 sub. The Swedish Navy, I think... Swedish Navy has... Come on, show me. Swedish Navy has 4 subs. And actually, even then, I'm going to take Sweden off, because Sweden only has 7 corvettes. Yeah, and then the Russian Baltic Fleet. Yeah. James, what have you got to say on this? You clearly wanted it in. You had an from you. Take it away.
Right. So, as it stands, the Russian Baltic Fleet does have the largest fleet out of pretty much anything in the Baltic. Now, that being said, some of it is actually quite modern compared to some NATO countries, because pretty much all of them are now NATO. But I would say the one that's Oh. You say control of the Baltic Sea, right? That was the question, wasn't it?
Control and establish large presence.
Yeah. So it would be the Russian Baltic Fleet. But if you want full control, I would say the Danish. The Danish and the Swedes, because they have control to the Baltic. They can control who goes in, who goes out.
That's true.
Yeah. Because don't forget the Kageract is... There's only 2 decent ways in. So...
The Germans control
You either
one,
go
the Danes control the other.
No, actually the Swedes control one.
Oh, yeah, the other channel, yeah.
Yeah, so you got the one that's through Copenhagen, and then you got the one that goes through past Nyborg.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you control Nyborg, or you control Copenhagen, and you control entry and exit. The Kiel Canal is pretty much not really used by NATO Navy, well, any Navy these days. So, yeah, you're looking at Denmark and Sweden.
Yeah, good point. Anyone else got anything they want to add before we move on?
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. Okay. Okay. This is a nice one. Bowmill Boy asks. We will do when I get it in there. There we go. Bowmill Boy asks, what is the lore of the background picture for Ramblings? So, originally, when I was doing Ramblings, I had what's currently my desktop background as the image, which is a picture of one of the airships that I've created for the Nations RP that some of you may or may not have seen at some point. But I decided I wanted an actual image for Ramblings. So I commissioned our good friend Soul, who had done the other artwork for me, to do a image for Ramblings. So I decided, originally it was just me in the center, with the white figures off to either side, which could be filled in with people who were regulars. Now, as it stands, the original Ramblings audience from when it went live on YouTube, Ramblings panel, was usually Chair, Random Idiot, myself, and occasionally Drac would come on. Dragon and Foxo not yet being regular features. Now, I keep meaning to get it updated, but I haven't got the money to add Dragon and Foxo in, sadly, and probably Dr. Clark as well as the third figure, to fill out the panel. In regards to what else is in the picture, well, long before Rambling existed, I used to do a few things. I used to do watch parties for a few things. So I added a few things that were, well, important to me in the way in which I've come up through the dry dock, etc. So you've got Galaxy Express 39 over there on the left, and the battleship New Nautilus from Nadia, Secret of Blue Water, front and center. And that's why the Rambling image is the way it be. Next question is from...
I could have sworn I was pretty regular at the start as well.
You were, but I could never decide what to depict you as.
Fair.
Younglings, all of you.
Did you ever decide what to depict me as?
Yeah, you've already... Yeah.
Because I'm the only one who turns up regularly.
Oh, yeah. You're going to get your depiction from Soul's earlier artwork.
Oh.
Since it fits you quite well.
Yeah, it really has that I'm going to stab a bitch vibe.
Yeah, like, I'm particularly going to go for the one from the image when we were doing that whole Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts game of the fox with the revolver and the polo jumper and the trench coat. That's quite distinctive. Dylan Gunneroff asks, what's your opinion on Admiral Zumwalt's sea control ship design? Do you think it's not a good fit for the USN and would be better for exporting to other smaller navies? The sea control ship design is... It's a ship that fundamentally is built for the wrong planet. Earth isn't really big enough where a ship like that really really works as a Catobar carrier. You need it as a ski jump carrier, and even then it kind of defeats the point, because if you're a ski jump carrier, you miss one of the key roles of the sea control ship, which is the ability to project sea control, which you do, and the plan was, the whole point with the sea control ship is you carry a single AWACS bird and a squadron and a bit of aircraft to defend that AWACS bird. And therefore you put the sea control ship at the center of a task force, and you use it to project sea control using the AWACS bird to provide you with the sensors you need to project sea control over areas of open ocean. Unfortunately, that kind of falls flat when you realize that it's not really, the world's not really big enough where that really matters for even a navy like the USN, because it's already got enough carriers to project sea control, and they can also do other things as well. And also, by the time the sea control ship's coming in, you've got things like land-based AWACS coming in for nations on a budget, rather than, you know, let's procure a small budget aircraft carrier to do this.
Even then, they run into the issue of they're small enough with small enough air wings that they don't have the level of protection a carrier battle group does.
Yeah, exactly.
Against CGNs.
Yeah, exactly.
Because a CGN will look at a sea control ship, look at its task force, and go, "If I can volley fire that down."
Yeah, it's a moving airfield for an AWACS bird and a squadron of fighters. That's all it is.
Yeah,
but that's not good enough.
In a world where nobody has, or the CGN hasn't been invented, it's a bad idea, and it would never work in a world where there is CGNs.
No, it would work in a world where there are CGNs. You just have to turn it. You just have to basically change the concept from. Well, first you need to upscale it slightly, and you basically need to procure it as your light carrier. You basically need to procure it as in 3s, so that basically you've got Surge for 2, and you have it not as a sea control ship, but as a light carrier carrying a single AWACS bird and 2 full squad and a not squadron, sorry, 2 6-ship wings of light jet fighters, like stuff like the more advanced versions of the BEA Hawk, the one that was actually a multi-role fighter, things about that size. And at that point, you get 3 light carriers around which you can center a task group with. Let's say you have a ASW frigate, an AA warfare frigate, and a strike-focused frigate, where, you know, you've got one's your air defense asset, one's your ASW asset, and one's your shit. We found something. Volley fire the tomahawks, or volley fly the harpoons, or whatever you've got. And if you focus 2 of those task groups together, so you've got 2 of them active at sea in the event of a crisis, that's enough of a force. It's not going to stop a carrier battle group if a carrier battle group comes and decides to have a crack, but you're going to hurt them. And that changes the calculus.
Yeah, you
but
have to think about it.
But the issue is, can I just point out?
Yeah, but I was about to.
The issue is. Oh, go on then, sorry, plate.
Yeah, but the problem with this is, name me one power that exists in a bracket where you could afford. Name me any power on this planet that needs that capability, and either A, could afford it, B, can't. There's no power on the world that fits into the sort of niche where you would need that capability at all. Any of the powers that exist on this planet don't need that quasi-expeditionary capability those ships offer, and therefore would just buy more frigates. They do, but they decide to opt for 1 or 2 full-size or ski jump carriers instead, and lean on other sensors for their defense at sea, which is technically cheaper. Or they do need expeditionary capability, they do have the money to pay for it, or they, you know, do something sensible, like be France and build a full Catobar carrier.
or they build like a Harrier carrier.
I already said that bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
The
just
issue with the sea control ship is it has 3 aircraft and
Yeah.
3 helicopters, and
Yeah.
they're Harriers in the original design concept.
yeah. You need the bigger versions of it. You need the
For an
yeah. Go on.
for an effective air group, for capable of strike or self-defense, or arguably maintaining a cap, you need 12.
Yeah.
You need 2 wings.
Yeah. Although, are we going to accept those are 2 wings of light fighters, or, given that you're probably not using this for strike, but except beyond limited strike?
That the Harrier arguably is a light fighter because it's especially Harrier 2 with VTOL capability.
Yeah. I think
The issue is the fact that when you start to get to 12 aircraft, you've ballooned just size of your carrier to the point where you're now looking at 23,000 tons and up.
Yeah, you could argue the only ships that meet the sort of criteria that me and Foxer were talking about that have ever actually been built are the Invincibles. 3 ships, fairly capable, carrying 2 wings and some change of fixed-wing VTOL aircraft, and carrier AEW. Admittedly, it's helicopter AEW, but still.
Yeah. Because my biggest issue with the sea control ship is, this is cool and all, but you're getting capability that you can otherwise get by putting a flight deck on an oil tanker. Like they did with the Falkland Islands. And because you're not having the massive amounts of, you're not having the large hangar to maintain the wing of aircraft, a significant amount of aircraft.
I can feel like you've got something to say, James. I can hear you wincing in the background.
It's like, have you, I mean, I don't want to say this, but has anyone had a look at the new, I don't want to call it the new, but the Iranian drone carrier?
Oh no, not this thing again.
Technically speaking, that would be a modern day sea control ship. Technically speaking, that feasibly works.
Yeesh. What a horrible thought.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for Foxer for reminding me about that.
And if I remember correctly, that also the advantage of being able to pull double duty as a tanker.
No, because she's a container ship. She's not got the tanks.
No, yeah, she's not the tanker one, is she?
No.
But she's the one based on the container ship. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's like when you get down to that smaller scale, you don't really have an advantage in building something specialized.
Bone Meal Boy, are you around today? Is he in the chat? Bugger. Is he in YouTube chat? Bugger. Because he's talking about the 1970. He's talking about the 1971 war. There are a lot of wars happening in 1971.
Talking about India, Pakistan.
India, Pakistan, Yom Kippur.
Since he's talking about the naval aspect,
Yom Kippur's 73, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that's 33.
Yeah.
What else is happening? Is anyone?
So, Sadu, in regards to wire light carrier, simply down to the fact that if you are an ocean-going navy, you basically do need, and you want to be serious, you need carrier airborne early warning, and you need fixed-wing aviation. That's just, you do. And so at that point, you have to basically decide how you're going to get it. And the Invincibles and ships like them are a very clear-cut, effective answer to that. In fact, I'd argue...
It's India, Pakistan.
Yeah.
It's in chat.
Yeah, good. But, yeah, so... Yeah, that's why you would have a lighter, smaller aircraft carrier. Yeah. Because but there is a limit to how light and how small you can go before it becomes just an exercise in futility. The Invincibles, the smallest you can actually go are ships like the Spanish carrier, the Thai carrier, and the first generation Italian carrier. Those are about as small as you can go before you get into why are we doing this territory.
Yeah, because air wings, like any sort of weapon, you need a level of mass and saturation with them. Because...
And I mean, Giuseppe Garibaldi, I'm going to back you up, Fox, the reason why I'm saying this, and backing up your point. She does the Italians absolute credit in terms of their design quality and their shipwrights, because she is 14,000 tons, full load, and she can carry up to 18 of AV-8B Harriers or helicopters. And that's on a 14,000 ton hull. That is actually impressive.
Like, just the bare minimum.
Yeah.
We have 2 wings. Because in aerial combat, you very quickly, with small air wings, run into the problem of, if you get to the point you're using 1 to 2 aircraft for cap, they are no longer an effective cap. And any incoming aircraft can just dogpile them and get through. At that point, and then that point, where have you brought the carrier?
The thing is, like, not everybody can afford a super carrier. And while, yes, you are right, you can fold the LHD and the light carrier into one nowadays, and that's what the Spanish did. And that's what the Australians were tempted to do, but then decided to not procure the Harriers for their ships, and they're not even fitted to deal with fixed-wing aircraft anymore. So yeah, you can do it that way, but there are benefits to having dedicated, purpose-built, smaller carriers that are just carriers. Because they know exactly what they are. They're carriers. They're not worried about being dragged off to be amphibious warfare platforms. They're carriers.
Yeah.
Like,
and it's case with stuff like the LHDs that are pulling double duty in at times as carriers. They still are. No, LHDs, never mind. Come with the destination. But yeah. Because there is a role when it comes to carrying aircraft where you're not actually wanting to carry aircraft, you're wanting to carry helicopters. And for the very small carriers, you can they do kind of get demoted at points to helicopter carriers.
No, so do all of the ships we've mentioned, the Invincibles, the Italian carriers, the Australian ships. Well, the Australian ships are only helicopters. The Spanish LHD / carrier, the new Italian LHD, which is also now their second carrier, as they're looking to sell Giuseppe Garibaldi is being decommissioned. The QEs and the Invincibles, they all had helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft.
Yeah. Well, they had a very, very small selection of fixed-wing aircraft. That was usually defined as Harrier.
Yeah.
Or Harrier 2.
Yeah. It was basically a way to get fixed-wing aviation on a ship that would normally be a helicopter ASW asset. That's basically the birth of the modern light carrier. Thank you. Thank you, Jacob Vanek. Yep, Japanese ships as well. Yep.
But you also do run into the issue of a lot of these helicopter carriers that can carry limited VTOL aircraft are not big enough to carry enough fixed wing aircraft to act as an effective carrier, even a very, very small carrier.
Yeah, the only, like I say, the real smallest bar for entry for that is stuff the size of the Invincibles and up, because that gives you that at that point you're not 2 wings, you're approaching nearly a full squadron, maybe more.
Yeah, your hope's in a dream. Well, anything smaller, you're just dreaming.
Although they have
And
their role
if
to
you
play,
go
to
back
be
to
fair.
the original Sea Control ship, you're in the middle of a nightmare.
Yeah. There's a reason why Giuseppe Garibaldi was a good first step, but if you look at what replaced her, it jumped in size. Cavor is a significant jump in size. Yeah, funnily enough, back up to something the size of the Invincibles.
Yeah.
Shocking, that, isn't it?
But so with the cargo, it's interesting because technically it can carry 28 F-35s. From what I've read, it's not it can't sustain 28 F-35s. And that's a very useful play distinction point between a helicopter carrier carrying VTOL and a light carrier. But yeah, do we want to move on?
Hang on one second, I'm just writing out a response. Right. Typical Bone Mill Boy, what books would you recommend on the naval aspect of the 1971 war? I wouldn't even know where to begin on the Indo-Pakistan War of 1971. I wouldn't even know where to begin with that. The only people I can think of for that would be... Chieftain would probably know books on the tank side. Your best bet is Dr. Clark for recommendations for ships. Unless, James, you've got anything you could think of for books about the naval side of the 71 war between India and Pakistan.
Okay, so I've got a couple of recommendations that I've read.
Okay.
Although, keep in mind, the most comprehensive of these books were written by members of the Indian Navy.
Biases are included. Always check your sources.
Yeah. That is Operation X by Sandeep Unithian and Captain MMR Samat. But that's specifically about the India's covert naval war in Bangladesh. It's about the Bangladesh side of things. That's a pretty good read if you take what's said about the Indian Navy with a grain of salt. But don't go too far with the salt. Another one, which is a lot more biased, but it is pretty comprehensive from what I've read. And that's Guardians of the Seas, Triumph of the Indian Navy and its air power in the 1971 war. the issue is that's written by Rear Admiral S.K. Gupta and Commodore Say, who were in service at this point. And if I remember correctly, actively participated in some of these operations. But yeah, of the books I've read, those are the two I'd recommend. Alright, next question. Or is James trying to speak?
I'm going to give James a chance to speak if he's got anything he wants to... James, if you're saying something...
really.
Oh, fair enough, there we go.
I was actually chewing on some bread.
That's fine.
I didn't realise it was that loud.
It's fine. It's fine. It's fine.
It's just-
Bread chewing is. We couldn't hear you, by the way, so that's why we were wondering why you were quiet. We could not
That's
hear
fine.
we could not hear the bread chewing, but bread chewing is a very, very important pastime. It's important.
I never-
It's more of we could I could see your Discord lighting up.
Yeah, we weren't sure if you were trying to speak or something, but we couldn't hear anything.
That's fine.
It's
It's very quick to bed, Dory.
Typical Guardian Officer asks, "What do you think the Hawk Missile B variant is better than the Rapier? Fundamentally different systems. Hawk is a mid-range system. A Rapier is a point defense system. Rapier's U.S. Army counterpart was the Chaparral. They're fundamentally different systems, Hawk and Rapier, for different range brackets." And I think we're done with the... Yep, yeah, okay, we're done with that. So now it's just Discord questions we've got to get to. We may actually pull this off. Holy shit. Actually, look. Yes, we may actually pull this off. Holy shit.
Don't jinx it.
Okay. Okay, here we go. Opinion. Typical Officer asks... opinions on the M6 linebacker. Do you think they forced the Bradley to be an SPAA? Do you think putting a couple of stingers in the place of 2 toe tubes isn't going to be an effective SPAA? And do you think the AN TQH1 Avenger is a better AA platform? I think they're both decent AA platforms. I think also let's not forget as well that they didn't just replace the stingers for the toes. They also gave the Bradley the tracking and fire control system to use its Bushmaster cannon as a low angle AA weapon.
Yeah.
Which is huge. That basically gives the US a viable, effective gun missile point defense AA platform that's relatively survivable on the modern battlefield for the first time since M163 was got rid of. Linebacker is a really, really good system. A really good system for point defense. It's not best in class. A dedicated system would be better, but it's a cheap and effective way to get a system using proven kit the US already has. Brilliant idea.
Yeah, and it's also a case of it's organic air defense.
Mm-hmm.
That's not in dedicated units. It's, remember correctly, it's designed to be a part of frontline forces.
Yep.
And for telling a helicopter to piss off, a Stinger will do the job.
Mm-hmm.
To be fair, the Avengers was mostly dedicated for divisions that gets thrown out of the back of the plane.
Yes, Avenger is just, yes, yeet us out of the back of fucking C-17. Off you go. Goodbye.
Any armored mechanized unit will prefer a linebacker.
Yes. Typical Gunnery Officer asks, do you think the SA-80 is the worst 5.56-45 NATO platform in the late Cold War? Do you think the soldiers on the field hated it? Yes! Yes, they did! SA-80 was utterly terrible. It was just bad.
Sadly, yes.
It was just bad all the way round.
Was it, though?
It depends on who you asked.
I feel like there's a more of a story here. Take it away, guys.
Just
To be fair, a
from
lot of the European bullpup stuff and their first designs are usually just about as bad. FAMAS didn't have a good reputation. I think the Steyr Aug is probably the only one that has a slightly better reputation, but to be fair, I don't think it's has that good of a reputation to begin with. It's just the SA80 ran into the most amount of problems out of the European bullpups.
yeah, it also saw the largest amount of widespread service though.
And don't forget, it also had to contend with probably one of the best battle rifles in modern existence. Had to replace that, and well,
Yeah.
Sometimes when you try to replace something that's, I don't want to call it perfect, but something that's really, 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 really good with something slightly substandard, then it becomes a whole new kettle of fish where people blow it way out of proportion. Yeah. The rifle was a bit shit, but
It had issues, and a lot of those issues were fixed with the L1. And
yeah,
from where I'm talking to veterans, you had to take care of it. And that's where a lot of the issues come from, because a lot of the time troops would try and treat it like they treated their FAL design derived rifles.
That's not gonna work.
And yeah, that it didn't work. It's a bullpup, it needs to be taken care of in this period.
So
Well,
it's
general.
also made out of, much more fragile material.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, what FN did to the... No, sorry, what... Oh, fuck, what are they called?
HK?
That's the legend. Yeah, what Heckle and Koch did actually did really good things to that rifle. And yeah, it might be slightly heavy, and yeah, it's not the world's nicest rifle to carry or hold on a gangway of a ship, or the sling's just a bit retarded, and the Susat is just, well, a walking radioactive disaster. It's not a bad rifle.
Oh, jeez.
Yeah, and it's like, okay.
The Susat is probably my biggest gripe with the thing.
And it's like, to be fair, what RBA1 needed to work in arid climates was a pack of Comlons.
And you know that the boys had those in their pockets.
Yeah, because talking to veterans about it, it is one of those. You'd put the condom on the end of the barrel and you'd put one over the charging handle, which would stop dust getting into the rifle. And the condons were thin enough that they didn't impact. It was safe to fire with them on. So that's what the troops did in Desert Storm. It's like a good portion of the hate that the SA-80 gets comes from bullpup bad. They get out down the hill of bullpups. Yeah.
Okay, so, Tailgating Officer, opinions on the Indonesian version of the Type 31 frigate. Do you think it's just a Type 31 with Turkish weaponry and sensors? Do you think it's still inferior to the actual Type 31? No, I think it's a Indonesian frigate. It's the Indonesian version of the 31. They've picked out a weapons load. That's where I got my 3-inch gun on 31 from. I've mixed up my bloody Indonesian and bloody British frigates. It's the Indonesian one that's going to carry 3-inch Otto Malera. But yeah, so basically they're starting with a 3-inch, a 35mm, and a 35mm Seawiz, and then a remote control weapon station for a 50 cal. But they're fitted for, but not with, another 3-inch, 2 additional remote control weapon stations, and 64 cell VLS, along with 2 triple torpedo launchers. So honestly, yeah, I think the Indonesians have picked a good ship. It's well armed for a peacetime role with an ability to be worked up into a much more effective frigate as time and money allows, which I think is given the Indonesians and the way their budget fluctuates, that's entirely the right call, because it means you can build them now, get them into the force, and then you could upgrade them as and when you want to. That's entirely the right call for Indonesia, definitely. And their final armament, when fully upgraded, 2 3-inch guns with 35mm Sea-Whiz and 64 cell VLS for AA and anti-ship missiles. That's a solid frigate for Southeast Asia. That's a very solid frigate for Southeast Asia. Anyone else got anything they want to add?
Not particularly.
No.
No.
Well, one final question to round off of, and we've done it. We've actually done it. Yippee-ki-yay. Channel Lord Chandel asks, Dragon, would it be fair to compare Kuat drive yards with Vickers Armstrong?
No.
Is Dragon even here?
Yes, actually. Why do you say no, Foxo?
Because they're an order of magnitude bigger than Vickers Armstrong.
By Star Wars standards, though, they are the closest thing.
Yeah, but Vickers Armstrong didn't run every single industry on the planet.
Yeah, but again, the magnitude of Star Wars is much bigger. So if you scale them for magnitudes, I would say, yeah, they're probably the closest equivalent. Have shares in basically every other competitor company, produce multiple different things across a variety of industries, is more than willing to tell the people who own them, how about no? In terms of scale, I would say technically yes, but you're right, technically Vickers never owned a planet, but then again, we've only got one planet, so I don't think that's a fair comparison.
Yeah,
Oh. Oh, Jesus Christ. That made me chuckle something fierce.
Mm.
He laughs.
I do laugh. But yeah, I suppose Kuat does everything.
I would say they're the closest thing in Star Wars. Maybe it's not exactly fair to directly equate them, but
There's no other massive multinational that does everything in Star Wars. Not really. Kuat comes the closest, I think. I mean, I suppose some of the Imperial mega conglomerates that appear towards the end of the Imperial rule.
the only other one you've really got's Blastech,
Yeah,
who sold weapons to both sides in the war, sold them to both sides in the Galactic Civil War, sold them to both sides again. Produce small arms to Starship grade. They're the only other one that comes remotely close, but Blastech don't really do vehicles much.
Yeah. Sign-off Fleet Systems does dabble outside of fighters occasionally, and StarCraft, but not to any major degree.
I wonder if that servant's still available.
So, we've actually finished number 45, and that means we're all caught up. So, the next Ramblings will probably be on Friday, since obviously this wasn't a normal one, but this was, and I'm going to say this now, this was the last Catchup Ramblings, as we are now all caught up. Starting on Friday, Ramblings, please feel free to ask questions in Ramblings, and I will be making note of them, but I will be going through and selecting questions that I want to answer. Simply because I want to actually give a lot more time to questions than I have been doing recently. Given that there are some questions that I want to give more time to, and we just can't right now. So, yeah, basically, that's the long and the short of it. Thank you, everyone, for coming. I hope you've all had a fantastic evening watching me ramble on, as I often do. Please do tune in on Friday. Who knows? All the questions could be interesting ones, and I could answer them all. It wouldn't be the first time I've done something like this and then just ended up answering all the questions anyway. Oh, dear. Right. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Take care. Thank you to the panel. Thank you, Foxo, James, Dragon, Moe, Four Turrets, the Dutchman. Thank you all. Couldn't do it without you. Take care, everyone, and I will catch you all next time. Bye-bye!